Hello, Honors English. We are now looking at the story of Finn. This will be 2 videos. The first video will be us looking at this conflict and pretty much just figuring out what the heck is going on. And then the second video is going to kind of handle the second part of it and talk about how it impacts the larger Beowulf narrative. So there's a lot here. I may not cover every little thing about it, but I'm going to try to do my best to squeeze as much meaning out of this as possible for you so you feel like these are actually useful and not pointless tangents. So, a couple things on this one. There are 2 opposing sides. So on the first side we have the Danes. And we need to know that this guy called Hawk, H-O-C, he had at least 2 children. He had Hildebur, who is his daughter, so she's a princess. And then we have Hnaf, who takes over the throne after his father dies. So Hnaf is the king of the Danes. So Hildebur, being a woman, and being an important woman, because she's the princess of the Danes, she gets married off to the Frisians. And she ends up marrying the king of the Frisians, whose name is Finn. And this may have been an attempt to sort of form an alliance of some kind, but if that's the case, it didn't work because Finn and the Frisians go to war against Hnaf and the Danes. And she's kind of stuck in the middle here, because Hnaf is her brother on the Danish side, and it mentions that she also has a son that she's going to lose on the battlefield. Now, we don't know if this is a son that she has with Finn, and, like, maybe he's fighting on his father's side. We don't know if she had her son before she married Finn and her son was fighting on the Danish side. We have no idea at this point, just looking at our margin notes. But regardless of what side her son is fighting on, she loses him. He doesn't make it. He dies on the battlefield. And her brother, Hnaf, king of the Danes, also dies. So now the Danes are without a leader. And that's always a dangerous position to be in. So let's examine this exploration of her grief. I don't know if I already said this, but it's going to mention the Jutes. The Jutes are a 3rd tribe. They have teamed up with the Frisians. So it's Jutes and Frisians versus Danes. So you can see how things didn't go well for the Danes. They got a little bit ganged up on, we'll say. So here we go, line 1070. Hildebur, she's the princess, remember, married to Finn. Hildebur had little cause to credit the Jutes, son and brother. She lost them both on the battlefield. She, bereft and blameless. They, foredoomed, cut down and spear gored. So we have this lovely parallelism with our adjectives. We have she, comma, 2 adjectives, and then we have they, comma, foredoomed, comma, and then they get their 2 adjectives. So it has like a rhythm. She, bereft and blameless. They, cut down and spear gored. It kind of highlights the uselessness of being a woman at this time. Like, bereft and blameless is more of an emotional condition. Like, bereft means you're feeling the loss, and blameless is like, you didn't do anything. Whereas, you know, their adjectives that these men get, cut down, spear gored, they're very physical descriptions. So it sort of maintains this tension of, like, the women are feeling the aftermath, but the men are doing the actions here. And we don't want to overlook the word foredoomed either, because this is like sort of cheating at foreshadowing, because they're kind of trying to foreshadow after it happened. So I don't know if that really counts. But to say that they're foredoomed is still pushing that futility of, you know, they're destined to die because they are living in a violent world, and it's just a matter of time. As Beowulf says, for all of us, living in this world is just waiting for your death. So this was their time to go. So foredoomed. She, the woman in shock, waylaid by grief, Hawk's daughter. How could she not lament her fate when morning came and the light broke on her murdered dears? Do not ignore this mention of the light breaking. This is a pretty big recurring image, or we could even say a motif, dawn. What does dawn mean in a hopeless world where everyone's just hurting each other and dying all the time, right? We would normally associate the sun rising with like hope, a new day, everything is made fresh again. We have this underscore of Christianity in our interpretation of things sometimes where it's like, oh, his mercies are made new every morning. Well, remember, that's not the case for these pagans. So for the pagans, when the sun comes up, it's just going to reveal all of the horrible things. It's going to bring to light all of the blood and destruction that has happened. So when it says, how could she not lament her fate when morning came? That's almost a pun, right? You have the double meaning of morning as in dawn, but also mourning is being sad about losing someone you love. How could she not lament her fate when morning came and the light broke on her murdered dears? And so farewell delight on earth. War carried away Finn's troop of thanes, all but a few. How then could Finn hold the line, or fight on to the end with Hengist? How save the rump of his force from that enemy chief? So we find out war carried away Finn's troop of thanes, all but a few. Is that war carried away as in they're retreating? Is it war carried them away as in, like, they died in the war? Whatever that is, it says that Finn is going to have a hard time trying to keep fighting the Danes. So even though Hanaf was king of the Danes and he's dead now, there's a guy right behind him ready to take charge, and that guy is Hengist. So Hengist has emerged to contend with Finn, and it's getting really tense, and it's a very equal match. So they decide to settle it non-violently. So here's the deal, right? They're not just, again, as we said, they're not just bloodthirsty barbarians. They do fight a lot, but they actually can be quite civilized. Here's the negotiation. A truce was offered as follows. First, separate quarters to be cleared for the Danes. Hall and throne to be shared with the Frisians. So the Danes that get captured and sort of like forced to join with the Frisian people here, they're going to get their own separate quarters. You're not going to make them try to bunk together, because that would just be disastrous, right? But the hall and throne are shared with the Frisians, so they still are going to eat in the same hall, and there's still going to be a Frisian on the throne over them. So then, second, every day at the dole out of gifts, so remember, a good king gives out gifts, and that's what Finn plans to do. Every day at the dole out of gifts, Finn, son of Folkwald, should honor the Danes, bestow with an even hand to Hengist, and Hengist's men, the wrought gold rings, bounty to match the measure he gave his own Frisians, to keep morale in the beer hall high. So all of the Danes that are now forced to join this group, they are going to be given just as much treasure as the Frisians get. That seems fair, right? So both sides then sealed their agreement. With oaths to Hengist, Finn swore openly, solemnly, that the battle survivors would be guaranteed honor and status. No infringement by word or deed, no provocation would be permitted. Their own ring giver, which was their old king who died in the battle, Hanaf, their own ring giver, after all, was dead and gone. They were leaderless, if enforced allegiance to his murderer. So if any Frisian stirred up bad blood with insinuations or taunts about this, the blade of the sword would arbitrate it. So this is this is quite the olive branch. Because Finn is like, I know that you guys don't want to be here. You don't want to live with the people that defeated you. I get it. But I promise I'm not going to let anybody talk negatively towards you. I'm not going to let anybody mock you just because you lost the battle. If anybody tries to taunt you, I will put them to death. The blade of the sword would arbitrate it. Like, I'm not going to tolerate infighting. Like, we're one group now, so we have to act like it. So then, it says, a funeral pyre was then prepared. Effulgent gold brought out from the hoard. The pride and prince of the shieldings lay awaiting the flame. So this is their king, Hanaf. Of course, they're putting gold on the pyre because he died gloriously, and they're commemorating that. Everywhere there were blood-plastered coats of mail. The pyre was heaped with boar-shaped helmets forged in gold, with the gashed corpses of well-born Danes. Many had fallen. So, it's just emphasizing, it's like stacking the armor. Like, by stacking how much armor there is, you can see how many people actually died. And it's a lot. Then Hildebert ordered her own son's body be burnt with Hanaf's, the flesh on his bones to sputter and blaze beside his uncle's. So this is interesting, because if her son was fighting on the Frisian side, the fact that he's partaking of this Danish funeral pyre is interesting. Or if her son was fighting on the Danish side, it's sort of emphasizing, like, that's a big move for her to be like, it's kind of, regardless of which way you cut it, it's kind of revealing her loyalty. Like, even though she's married to Finn and he's Frisian, she's still wanting this connection to the Danes, because her brother Hanaf is the king of the Danes, and for her to say, like, I want my son to be with his uncle rather than buried how his father would want him to be buried, or whatever. Like, she's joining her son on the side of the Danes. So this is like, even though Hildebert can't lead a battle, this is her way of making like a political statement almost. So the woman wailed and sang keens. The warrior went up. Another ambiguous statement. The warrior went up. Does that mean he went up in flames? Probably. I mean, the next line is talking about flames. But the warrior went up, like, did he go to heaven? I don't know. That could be a meaning there. Carcass flames swirled and fumed. They stood round the burial mound and howled as heads melted. Ugh, what a horrible image. Ugh, I hate that. Crusted gashes. Ugh. Spattered and ran bloody matter. Ugh, it's real gross. Crusted gashes, like, we're talking about, like, wounds that are scabbing over and coagulating. The blood is now, like, running again because it's being heated. It's pretty nasty. It's pretty nasty. The glutton element flamed and consumed the dead of both sides. So, that's a cool way to describe fire, the glutton element. If you remember, gluttony is one of the 7 deadly sins, and it's like eating so much even if you don't need it. It's like overeating, overindulging. And if you think about the fact that fire is hungry because it's always consuming, that's a really beautiful way to describe fire, the glutton element. Their great days were gone. Warriors scattered to homes and forts all over Friesland. Fewer now, feeling loss of friends. Hengist stayed, lived out that whole resentful, blood-sullen winter with Finn, homesick and helpless. And I'm going to stop this video here because Screencast-O-Matic only gives me 15 minutes and we're at 14 and a half. But this is definitely building. Like, this poet is definitely taking his time to build tensions. It's definitely acknowledging, like, yeah, they made a truce, but there's no way they're going to actually live peacefully. It's not going to happen. And, again, foreshadowing. Hengist is resentful. Like, we know he's going to do something about it. So in the next video, we'll finish reading through, and then we'll talk about how it affects the rest of the Beowulf narrative.